Nations of the Group of 20 welcomed President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's proposal to combat global poverty. Spain remains on high alert due to the increase of COVID-19 cases and could be facing the beginning of a sixth wave of contagion. A Malaysian appeals court on Wednesday upheld former Prime Minister Najib Razak's conviction for corruption in the first case related to the multi-billion-dollar scandal at State Fund 1MDB. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Leo Martin, this time with a tie. From the Telesur studios in Havana, we begin with the news. Nations of the Group of 20 welcomed President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's proposal to combat global poverty. During the first G20 Sherpas meeting, the Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs, Carmen Moreno Toscano, presented to representatives of the 20 most advanced economies a global welfare plan submitted by the Mexican president last November to the United Nations Security Council. The Mexican Foreign Ministry reported that the proposal was well received, particularly by representatives of developing nations who are aware of the effects that the health crisis caused by COVID-19 has had on the increase in extreme poverty. The proposal seeks to support more than 750 million people living on less than $2 a day through voluntary contributions from the world's richest countries.
I take this opportunity to inform the President that yesterday we presented his global plan at the G20 meeting in Jakarta, and it was well received. The G20 is required to contribute to it.
We review the situation in the north of the Americas regarding the implementation of the Stay in Mexico program. Since the last few hours, the government of the host country has placed conditions on Washington and determined that they will not accept vulnerable migrants without an appointment to attend a hearing in the United States. In addition, they informed that they will request a health and vaccination status against COVID-19 of the citizens returned to Mexican territory. The government of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador always made it clear that they accepted the re-implementation for humanitarian reasons of the program created by former President Donald Trump, which, despite the harsh criticism made during the campaign, has had to be taken up by Joe Biden. Mexico has assured that it will not accept citizens whose refugee applications have not been approved. Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez launched the More Culture program on Tuesday, which will enable more than 400,000 young people across the country to have access to cultural goods, services, and practices, thus vindicating their right to full access to culture and arts in general. Fernandez stressed that the initiative seeks to give the beneficiaries of state scholarships a possibility of attending activities of an artistic and cultural nature, and to give young creators the opportunity to develop their skills and opportunities for professional growth. The president has also pointed out that the program seeks to reactivate the sector's industries with the creation of the thousands of jobs. Fernandez talked about the importance of maintaining hope in the fight against the pandemic and to rise up as they have done so many times before. In the midst of a brutal economic crisis, the Haitian government on Tuesday decreed an increase in fuel prices. The authorities claimed that a law passed in 1995 states that when prices rise on the international market, the nation must make the corresponding adjustments. The increase in gasoline and other derivatives will come into effect this coming Friday. According to the Minister of Economy and Finance, the state has lost more than $15 million from 2010 to the present day as a result of the subsidy of petroleum products. The minister assures that this situation is unsustainable. As of Friday, a gallon of gasoline will go from $2.01 to $2.5 and diesel from $1.69 to $3.53. In July 2018, the announcement of the increase in fuel prices caused several days of violent demonstrations in that country, which claimed the lives of several people. Republican senators from the U.S. Foreign Relations Committee have paved the way for discrimination against Haitian citizens to worsen in the Dominican Republic after enacting a new resolution. The document promoted by the legislators assures that the arrival of Haitian citizens to the neighboring Dominican Republic increases the risk of crime and criminal incidents in the country. The resolution comes as the Dominican Republic has carried out a series of deportations of pregnant women or women with babies who even have legal status in the country, on the grounds that it is impossible to pay for their health care. U.S. lawmakers say that the humanitarian crisis, together with the level of crime, gang violence, and instability in Haiti, have exacerbated the suffering of Haitians, but also increased the risks for the Dominican Republic to be affected. This Tuesday, the U.S. House of Representatives approved more than $760 billion for defense spending. The huge increase to the Pentagon's budget had bipartisan support in exchange for sanctioning the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, more funding for Ukrainian defense assistance, and a program aimed at dissuading China. The bill received 363 votes in favor versus only 70 against. Of those who voted in favor, 169 were Democrats and 194 Republicans. The final version of the bill also provides remedies for what they call abnormal health incidents, or the Havana syndrome, scientifically and technically denied by experts from around the world. The multi-million-dollar bill must now go to the Senate for discussion. Among other things, it proposes a 2.7% pay raise for military service members and Defense Department civilian employees. We'll be right back after this very short break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to From the South. Spain remains on high alert due to the increase in the number of COVID-19 cases. Experts pointed out the European country could be facing the beginning of a sixth wave of contagion. According to numbers published by the Ministry of Health, the country reached nearly 300 cases per 100,000 inhabitants this week, which represented a 42-point increase since Friday, and more than 43,000 new infections were recorded. These numbers are cause for great concern, reflected in the increase of confirmed cases from 300 to 500. Infections in the Basque Country far exceeded that number with more than 800 cases per 100,000 inhabitants, and Navarra with more than 700 cases for the same proportion. Health authorities confirmed 12 cases of the Omicron variant, as experts agreed on the number of confirmed cases increasing in the next few days. In Cuba, the Center for State Control of Medicines, Equipment, and Medical Devices on Tuesday approved the emergency use of Soberana Plus vaccine candidate for COVID-19 convalescent children over age 2. The objective is to apply the new vaccine candidate produced by the Findlay Vaccine Institute for children with 2 months or more of hospital or home medical discharge. Thus, the Center for State Control of Medicines, Equipment, and Medical Devices argued Soberana Plus candidate may be administered to all COVID-19 convalescent children older than 2 years of age, in accordance with Cuba's present health regulations and provisions. Cuba has applied a dose of Soberana Plus since the end of past September for COVID-19 convalescent people aged older than 19 with 2 months or more of their hospital or home medical discharge. In an exclusive interview with Telesur English, lawyers for Venezuelan diplomat Alex Saab, detained and charged in the United States, explained the details of the case. David Rivkin, a partner of Baker Hostetler law firm and lawyer for Saab, explained the unlawful nature of the case, given Alex Saab's status as a special envoy.
The situation in the United States in Alex Saab's case is as follows. We are in the Court of Appeals, specifically in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, that presides over district courts in Florida and several other states. And we are arguing in favor of Alex Saab's status as a special envoy from Venezuela to Iran. Under both international law and U.S. domestic law, special envoys are entitled to full diplomatic inviolability, which means that he cannot be subjected to any form of civil or criminal process. He cannot be punished. He cannot be subjected to trial. He cannot be molested in any way. And given the state of the law in this area, we're optimistic that we will carry the day.
And the lawyer for Alex Saab stressed that his defense is arguing that the United States cannot proceed against him on any charge, given his diplomatic status.
I'd like to confirm that by virtue of his full diplomatic inviolability, the United States cannot proceed against him on any charge, including the one charge that remains from his indictment. Full diplomatic inviolability, I think it's important for your listeners to appreciate that, means precisely that. Inviolability from any form of coercive measures of whatever nature, no matter what the charge may be.
David Rivkin, lawyer to Alex Saab, noted the unlawful actions by the authorities of Cape Verde on detaining and extraditing the Venezuelan diplomat to the United States.
They were violating both their obligations. Cabo Verde, as as a country that has ratified the relevant international treaties. They're violating international law. They're also violating Cabo Verde law. They had absolutely no right to detain him. They had no right to extradite him. And the United States had no right to seek his extradition. So there have been a lot of unlawful actions that have taken place so far. And what we're working on now is to finally get to the point where those wrongs, those unlawful actions would be remedied, and Alex Saab would be set free to continue his diplomatic mission.
Nancy Hollander, a partner at Friedman Boyd Hollander law firm and serving as an expert for Alex Saab, underlined the political nature of the case and the difficulties in securing a fair trial.
We will work very hard to ensure to the extent we can that he will receive a fair trial, but it will be very difficult. This is a political case. There is no doubt about it. Alex Saab was taken off an airplane that dragged off an airplane essentially in Cape Verde. He was on his way to Iran as a special envoy because he needed medicines for Venezuela that it could not get because of the sanctions imposed upon it by President Trump. The United States is or was the largest importer of Venezuelan oil. And when the United States stopped importing Venezuelan oil, everything else fell apart. Venezuela could not provide for its people. And this is why Alex had to go to Iran to get medicines for the country. Now, whether he can get a fair trial in the United States, it is problematic because he's in Miami. Miami jurors are known to be hostile to Cubans and Venezuelans, and it will be very difficult, but we will do everything we can for him if the case gets back to the district court. At this point, the district court is not allowed to proceed, as David explained, because the case is in the 11th Circuit.
We have more stories coming up after this final short break. Stay with us. Back. A Malaysian appeals court on Wednesday upheld former Prime Minister Najib Razak's conviction for corruption in the first case related to the multi-billion-dollar scandal at State Fund 1MDB. Najib, whose term as Prime Minister ended with defeat at the 2018 elections, was found guilty and sentenced to 12 years in prison for diverting an estimate of $9.88 million from SRC International into his personal bank accounts in July last year. The 7 charges in the SRC case involve allegations of abuse of power, several counts of money laundering, and criminal breach of trust. The court decision came as the Prime Minister attempted a comeback in that country that has been through 3 prime ministers since the 1MDB scandal brought down his government. He remains popular within the ruling United Malays National Organization, which is now back in power after 2018's defeat. Australia on Wednesday joined the diplomatic boycott of the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics initiated by the United States. The Prime Minister of the country announced that they will not send a diplomatic delegation to participate in the event. The Australian Premier based his decision on alleged human rights abuses perpetrated by the Chinese state in Xinjiang province. Australia is the first country to endorse a political boycott launched by the United States on Monday, although neither nation banned athletes from the competition. For its part, China said the U.S. is trying to disrupt the games based on its ideological bias, lies, and rumors. China also added that the boycott would only make their sinister intentions even clearer to people around the world and further erode their credibility and morality. The Bundestag, or German federal parliament, elected the Social Democrat Olaf Scholz as the country's new chancellor a few moments ago. Greens and liberals added their support. Yet the longest standing ovation in Berlin was not for Scholz, but for outgoing Chancellor Angela Merkel. All except the far right honored the one who took office for more than 16 years. Thus, 2.5 months after the election, we will see a Germany without the woman's leadership. Olaf Scholz will preside with 8 men and 8 women in his team. The Health Ministry will be headed by a renowned German epidemiologist. The Finance Ministry by the Liberals and the Greens will be in charge of the Ministry of Economy and Climate. Scholz needed 369 of the 736 seats under the German system, and together with his government allies, he won 416, securing a comfortable majority. On the sidelines of the 7th edition of the Dakar International Forum on Peace and Security in Africa, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and his Senegalese host President Macky Sall denounced the unfair representation of Africa at the United Nations Security Council, where no African country has a permanent seat.
Make sure that we can really act on this reform. God only knows when it will be done because many interests are at stake. But what is certain is that it's unfair that the African continent, with 54 countries, is not represented as a permanent member of the Security Council. With South Africa, with all the other countries, we will continue to fight to stop this injustice to Africa.
We want fairness, we want Africa to be well represented and to be heard, because it cannot be fair that 1.3 billion people's views and thoughts cannot be heard at that high level. In the same way that the views of the countries which have a veto right are heard.
At least 38 people died and 69 were injured in a huge fire on Tuesday that tore through an overcrowded prison in Burundi. Many prisoners were still asleep when the blaze took hold in a penitentiary in Burundi's capital, Gitega. Much of the facility was destroyed, and the Interior Ministry informed that the disaster was caused by an electrical short circuit at the nearly century-old prison. Victims with the most serious burns were taken to hospitals, some carried in police pickup trucks, while others with milder cases were treated at the scene. The facility housed more than 1,500 inmates at the end of November, according to prison authority figures, far higher than its capacity of 400. Now, the Iranian government has reiterated that the lifting of United States sanctions is a non-negotiable requirement in order to continue the talks taking place in Vienna to revive the nuclear deal. Meanwhile, Tehran and its allies denounced that the negotiations are being undermined by Washington and the Israeli regime. We have more in the following report by our correspondent, Hisham Onus.
Syrian Foreign Minister Faisal al-Mekdad, speaking in Tehran, reiterated Syria's support for Iran's positions with respect to the Vienna nuclear negotiations. Damascus agrees with Tehran that a good agreement is feasible as long as Europe has the political will to sign the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and the United States abandons its policy of maximum pressure against country. The position announced by the Syrian Foreign Minister reflects the position of the Syrian leadership and people, which is a position of principles that advocates the rights of all nations, including the Islamic Republic of Iran, in developing and obtaining nuclear energy for peaceful purposes, and therefore they agree with the Persian country that negotiations should lead to the lifting of sanctions and stop the policy of extortion and maximum pressure applied by the United States against the Islamic Republic of Iran. In the same context, the two allies denounced that the occupying Israeli regime is putting pressure on the West and is carrying out a campaign of lies and accusations against Iran in order to derail the Vienna negotiations. This is part of an Israeli plot to destabilize the West Asian region, as Damascus and Tehran denounced. The world community must stop this aggressive policy of the Zionist regime aimed at undermining negotiations that could lead to an international agreement with Iran that does not benefit the interests of the Zionist entity. And that is why they conduct this campaign of lies every time a new round of negotiations begins, even though it harms the interests of Israel's Western partners. Meanwhile, Tehran maintains it will not withdraw its demands. These demands are contained in the draft proposals Iran presented during the recently concluded 7th round of nuclear talks, and with hopes they will be met in the upcoming negotiations.
Hisham Onus, Telesur, Oriente Medio.
We've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at Telesur English. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Dio Martin with a tie. Thanks for watching.